This lesson is for 4th grade. It's Chapter 8, Lesson 2. This one's over Earth and the Moon. In this lesson, you'll hear the following vocabulary: crater, phase, lunar eclipse, and solar eclipse. Let's get to it. When you look up in the sky at nighttime, most of the time the brightest thing you're going to see in the sky is the moon. But here's the thing. The moon, unlike stars, does not make its own light. It's just reflected light from the sun. As you can see from this picture here, you see the sun shining its light, and it reflects onto the moon and bounces onto Earth, and that's what we see, just reflected light. The moon is our closest neighbor in space. It's about 400 times closer than the sun. That's 240,000 miles, because the sun is 93 million miles away. That's a long way away. That tells you that the sun is huge and very powerful and bright. 93 million miles, and it takes 9 minutes for the light and heat from the sun to get here. But yet when you look in the sky at night, the sun and the moon almost look the same size. It's a really big star. Well, the moon and Earth have some similarities. One is that rocks on the moon and Earth are very similar because they're essentially both big rocks, and they too don't make their own light. They get their light from the sun. There are some differences, though. The moon is much smaller than the Earth, and because of that, that's why it revolves around the Earth. Smaller objects always revolve around the bigger object. There is no air on the moon. There is no atmosphere on the moon, and it almost has no water on the moon. So because of those factors, the moon has really extreme temperatures. Daytime it's hot enough to boil water, and nighttime it's colder than anywhere you're going to find on Earth. So that's why, again, there's no moon, or there's no life on the moon. The moon has a few mountains and flat plains, but it's covered with craters. A crater, a vocab word here, is a hollow pit in the ground. That goes back to why we said there is no atmosphere. Think of an atmosphere like a force field that's surrounding the planet. So you have this force field surrounding the Earth. As a meteor is trying to come in, it is going to hit that atmosphere and burn up. And it's never going to hit the Earth's surface. Now, occasionally it does, and that's a meteorite, and that's another lesson. But it's rare that that happens here on Earth. That's because we have the atmosphere. Now, the moon has no atmosphere, so when the same thing happens, crash, you have a crater really quick. Those large rocks that float in the sky, those are meteors, and they cause a good chunk, no pun intended, of the moon's craters. If meteors are crashing all the time, again, why doesn't Earth have them? It's because Earth has an atmosphere, and they burn up before they enter the surface. Now we know rotation on Earth is 24 hours, which is a day. We know the revolution of the Earth around the sun is 365 and 1/4 day. The revolution of the moon around the Earth is give or take 29 days, which is about as long as an average month. A month is about 30, 31 days, depending on the month. So because of this, while this is happening, it's revolving and getting different amounts of reflected sunlight. It appears that the moon is changing shapes. Those are apparent shapes, and we call those apparent shapes phases. The phases of the moon. And this goes through this cycle every month, and they see each phase one time a month. At this time, the sun is always shining, and it's lighting one half of the moon at a time while the other half is dark. And during the moon's orbit, we see different fractions of the lighted half. Okay? Those phases are, and listen carefully, and the best way to remember this is if you know some of them, or at least half of them, you're going to know the other half. There's 8 phases here, so listen carefully and take heed to these hints. The first 4 are waxing phases. And when you're waxing, wax on, wax off. when you put on the wax, you're trying to make something shine. So when you're waxing, you're getting brighter and brighter. That's one hint that can help you. The light is always going to be on the right side in these phases. The light is on the right, right? Okay? And you'll always know what across from it is an opposite. Okay? The easiest ones that I like to remember first is you have new moon, which has no light, and its opposite is the full moon, which is all light. The other ones that are easiest to remember are your halves. So you do your T here. We said light is on the right, right? So light here. This is first quarter. The opposite of first is third or last. You can call it last. Some people do. And the light on this side is the opposite. So just look up light, dark, light, dark. Okay? So now that you know these, let's fill in the X. Okay? Again, these are waxings, and the other names that you need to know are crescents, which if you had a crescent roll before, you know the shape. I also like to think of these four like you're counting a dollar, and how many quarters are in a dollar? 4. So here's your 1 quarter, 50 cents, 75, and a dollar. So just a little bit, half. Then you get to your gibbous, waxing, the light is on the right, right? And almost full but not complete is a gibbous, 75 cents, and you're back to your full. You now know these, so these are easy. Look to the opposite waxing, whining, crescent, gibbous. So where there was light, there's now dark, and vice versa. We know our third and last, which we talked about. And then you have waxing, whining, gibbous, crescent, light, dark, light, dark. Okay? No, those hints can help you. Opposites can help. No, thinking of it as 4 quarters and a dollar can help you. Light is on the right, right can help you as well. Okay? Those are some hints in knowing the moon phases. Moon does have gravity. It's pulling slightly on the Earth. On the side of Earth that faces the moon, water's going to bulge and slightly move outward. The moon pulls more than the sun because it's closer to the Earth. Now because of that, the moon's gravity is going to cause tides. Tides are the daily rise and fall of the ocean's surface. Most places on Earth have a high tide or a low tide. We'll elaborate more on tides in another video. Finally, we're going to talk about eclipses. An eclipse, not ellipse, but eclipse, is a shadow cast by either Earth or the moon, depending on what's getting the shadow. These show the two types. You have your lunar eclipse and your solar eclipse. Here's the difference. In a lunar eclipse, the sun is always first in these. It's shining, and the Earth is blocking the moon. Since it's lunar, I know Luna is talking about the moon. The moon is being totally blocked out by the Earth, and it passes into its shadow. Okay, in the solar eclipse, it's vice versa. And there's a couple versions here. You have the sun, and the moon is in the path in between the sun and the Earth, and it's casting a shadow on the Earth. There are two types. Here's your partial eclipse. It's only when part of the sun is blocked, and then you have your total eclipse when all of the sun is blocked and you can't see anything. Those are very dangerous. Never look at an eclipse, especially solar eclipse. Lunar eclipse is safe, but don't look at the solar eclipse. It can damage your eyes. It can cause blindness. Sunglasses are not even going to help you. So just in general, make it a rule. Never look directly at the sun if you don't want to hurt your eyes. Scientists have special tools to look at it, and we'll let them look at it safely. So we talked about a few things. Keep in mind. We talked about similarities and differences between the Earth and the Moon. We talked about how the Moon has no air or atmosphere, and that causes craters. We talked about moon phases. We talked a little bit about tides, and we talked about eclipses. If you have any questions, feel free to message me below in the comments section or leave me a message, students, on Edmodo.